Bye bye, Aston Martin. Thanks for all the points. Nice knowing you, but McLaren are here now, so bye, 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 bye. Hello, my name's Tom. Back to F1 Fantasy. We're going into Spa this weekend, and it's a sprint weekend, so we're going to be discussing team selection. And of course, Aston Martin are out of the door, McLaren are in the door, in case you hadn't guessed from the intro. So yeah, I'm going to be discussing my team selection, going over a couple of different builds that I'm looking at. Obviously, now suddenly budget is kind of more of a thing. It's not just like pick the template and here's the budget choice of the week. Now we've actually got some real decision making to be had here, and we have had real decision making for the last couple of weeks, which I have made some changes over the last couple of weeks, but I can't help but feel that despite my big jump in rank from in 140,000 down to about 40,000 now, jumped nice 100,000 places, I still feel frustrated that I just didn't trust that McLaren that little bit more. So in Silverstone, brought in Piastri because I thought they looked quite decent. I thought I'd take a little bit of a risk on Piastri, and lo and behold, McLaren were amazing. So then I thought, oh, I'll take a little bit more. Dip my toes in Silverstone, go a little bit deeper into the pool, McLaren pool, for the Hungaroring, and McLaren constructor comes in for Aston Martin, and it's like, yep, happy with that. But then it's like I almost went for the triple McLaren. I could have afforded it in Hungaroring, and now I'm just kind of full of regret because now I can't afford triple McLaren unless I drop one of the Red Bulls, which I do not want to do. So what do we do if we can't afford triple McLaren? Because in my opinion, if you've got the budget for triple McLaren and triple Red Bull, you should run it. Quite simple. It's as simple as that. Even if it means going for Hulkenberg, and like I said, I had the opportunity to do that going into Hungary. I chose not to. I think personally this was, well, obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I think I got too caught up on the Ricciardo versus Hulkenberg thing and just didn't pay enough attention to where the main bulk of points are going to. The budget option is just fairly insignificant in the grand scheme of things. When you're scoring on average, a good week is like 300 points plus or whatever, and your budget options are scoring like 10 if they've done well. I definitely spent too much focus on the Ricciardo versus Hulkenberg option. I should have just scrapped off Ricciardo and Alonso, gone in with Norris and Hulkenberg, and I would have been absolutely singing and dancing. But now I'm locked out of the triple McLaren, at least for the time being, until there's some price changes, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So yeah, we need to make the best of it. So basically, if you've got the budget for triple McLaren, triple Red Bull, plus any random budget driver, do it, I would say. But if, like me, you're locked out of that triple up, then let's have a look at a couple of options that we can have going forward. So option number one is actually kind of just leaving it as this. Although I don't particularly want to do this because I genuinely think that Aston Martin are just not very good anymore. Obviously, relatively speaking to where they were just a few races ago, and particularly at the beginning of the season with Alonso just smashing out the podiums. But now it's Norris literally smashing the podium. So we want to try and get Norris in our teams, I think, because Norris is the better pick between him and Piastri. I will say that one little asterisk with that is that Norris has already had 2 driver of the days, so I do think Piastri is due a driver of the day soon. He's close. He's been close a couple of times already to a podium. When that podium comes, then I think it's pretty much a slam dunk that Piastri is going to get that driver of the day. But I don't think that holding out for that potential 10 points over Lando Norris is worth it in the long run. It looks like Lando Norris just consistently just that little bit better than Piastri, and that's no slight on Piastri. I do think Piastri's having a great couple of races, and I think he's doing fantastic as a rookie. However, the McLaren, if you can only get 2 options for me, the best options would be to go Lando Norris plus the McLaren constructor. The McLaren constructor is actually cheaper than Lando Norris himself. 13.9 million for Lando, 11.8 for McLaren, and you get the best. Get both drivers' points basically. So if you can, for whatever reason, only afford or only want one McLaren option, then definitely pick the McLaren constructor, particularly with their pit stops. Phenomenal pit stops. When they did that 2-second pit stop in Hungary, I was like, 10 points done. 10 points done, and then Red Bull come along and they get the 1.9 second pit stop in, but it doesn't really matter, I suppose, because had Red Bull in there as a constructor, it just would have been a nice bit more of a differential. But still, McLaren good for pit stops, and clearly now the second best team behind Red Bull. They just excelled around Hungary, and I wasn't sure that was going to be the case. The slow corners, blah blah blah, but they've proven that they're good around the slow and the medium speed corners as well. We already know they're good around the high speed corners, so we know they're going to absolutely smash up Spa, or at least they should do. And of course, it's a sprint weekend, so there's more points on offer. You get the picture. Basically, we need some McLaren in our team. So what do we do? For me, I think the option I'm leaning to is going with the Norris McLaren option. Obviously, Piastri's now 9 million. So if I wanted Piastri, I'm like a million off this already. Although if I went down to Hulkenberg, yeah, I'm still zero point 0.4 million off. So yeah, I'm just 0.4 off the dream basically. So it's not going to happen. So I think the best option for me this weekend is probably a team like this. I think Albon and Williams in general are going to be very strong around here actually, and you could even argue potentially if you're brave doubling up on the Williams. I'm not sure about this, but I do think the Williams is well suited to this track. Albon even said himself a couple of races ago when he was interviewed, he was asked, what tracks do you see yourself doing well at over the next few races? And Spa was like one of the ones he really was like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Spa. I think we'll do well there. So yeah, if you can't afford Piastri like me, I would definitely be going Norris and McLaren, keeping the triple Red Bull and going Albon. And then budget choice is kind of a bit whatever. It leaves me with 5 million, which is a bit annoying. Is that right? 5 million? I thought I had more money than that. I thought I could nip into Zhou or Tsunoda, but I can't quite get there. So yeah, I guess with my budget, I'm stuck between these three: Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Sargent. Hulkenberg's just a no-no for me. The Haas in the race is terrible. So if you can avoid Hulkenberg, I would. I know he'll occasionally spike a good race and score some points, but I just think consistency-wise, Hulkenberg's a big no for me in terms of budget, unless he's the only way for you to get triple Red Bull, triple McLaren, then he's a yes. So yeah, it's either Sargent or Ricciardo. Ricciardo's still got that driver of the day sort of possibility around him as well whenever he has a good race next. I think he's a good candidate for that, which is kind of the main reason I put him into the Hungary team anyway. So my initial thoughts are I like this team like this. Of course, there are alternatives, a couple of different alternatives. You could avoid Lando Norris and keep in with Piastri and just kind of, like I say, trug along with Fernando Alonso. Or if you really wanted to, you could drop down. Well, you could even just go Alex Albon, and then 9.9 million gets you up to like an Alpine or maybe a Lance Stroll if you really want to do it. You don't want to do it. No, I don't think you want to do it. I do think the Alpines, despite having a terrible couple of races, should be bouncing back. They can't possibly just DNF for a third race in a row, right? So potentially of this team, you could go with someone like an Ocon or a Gasly. Alpine's showed some reasonably good straight line speed so far this season, so they could be good around Spa as well. It's kind of difficult to know, particularly as they haven't really done any racing in the last couple of weekends. But you could have a nice team that looks quite nicely balanced with blue and orange, doesn't it? It's almost like you've got the quadruple or quintuple Red Bull, but no, it's not. It's impossible. So yeah, I think otherwise the only other real option to go triple McLaren is to drop Perez, and then that frees up tons of funds. And then again, you kind of avoid the budget options altogether here. You could keep Fernando Alonso, and my budget 11.8 million again. You could put in an Alpine. If you don't want the Alpines, you could put double Aston Martin. But again, I'm kind of not even sure about that. And to be honest, now that Fernando Alonso isn't qualifying high and also finishing the race high, his points are just kind of like where Gasly and Ocon were at the beginning of the season, like qualifying 8th, 9th, 10th, finishing the race 8th, 9th, 10th. It's only worth like single digit numbers in terms of fantasy. So arguably, if you're going to go with an Aston Martin asset, it might even be right to pick Lance Stroll over Fernando Alonso, even if you've got the budget. Because Lance Stroll doesn't qualify well. We know he's bad at qualifying, but generally good in the race. And, making up a few overtakes and positions gained. Lance Stroll we could see over the next couple of races, potentially Lance Stroll outscoring Alonso in terms of fantasy, at least. So we could definitely drop him down. Unfortunately, it doesn't really free up much funds because the next sort of jump would be up to 17, 19 million. Of course, there is one other option if you didn't want to go for these mid-price drivers, and that is, I don't know exactly, it kind of depends on your budget a little bit because I can only just about do this, but I could bring in George Russell and that leaves me at 4.6. So again, if you've got slightly less budget, you might be able to afford Hulkenberg in here, which... Hulkenberg just makes it's the grey. I don't know what it is. It's the grey in there. It just doesn't look good, does it? No. So yeah, either Sargent or maybe Ricciardo. Again, like I say, I'm not sure about Sargent, but I do think the Williams is going to be strong. So maybe if Sargent's going to be good at any point, maybe this is the race. So that leaves me with just 0.1 in the bank, and that enables me to keep up with these price rises with the McLarens. Although we did just see Perez go up by 1 million, just like. Again, and yet another bad qualifying. I think it was about 4 tenths off his teammate, which is just not great when, I think it was he P9. Not great, again, in terms of qualifying, but good in terms of fantasy points, and it enabled him to get driver of the day because, for whatever reason, people think that that's worthy of driver of the day. In my humble opinion, I don't think it is, but there we go. He's in the best car. He should be doing better than that in the first place. But anyway, he got driver of the day and he got a ton of points, and that put him up 1 million. So there is a bit of a risk in going with a team like this, that if Perez jumps up like another million or something, particularly being a sprint weekend where there's more chance for him to have a good race and score maximum points, I think going without Perez this weekend is kind of a double risk in terms of actual fantasy points and in terms of potential budget. But it does enable you to get in the triple McLaren plus George Russell. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, viewers, but I think Mercedes are bringing an upgrade to Spa, if I'm not mistaken. So we could again see Mercedes make a little bit of a push forward. They do seem to be more or less that kind of third best team at the moment, maybe just behind McLaren, or maybe in certain areas slightly ahead of McLaren even. So with a further upgrade, are we finally going to see Mercedes back at the second best team and nipping at the Red Bull heels? I don't know, but this team is definitely something I'm considering, but I don't really like going against the triple Red Bull. It's not something I am particularly fond of. So I think the most likely thing I'm going to do this weekend is stick with the triple Red Bull. I think it's kind of the safest thing, particularly being a sprint weekend, maximise those points. And then I think I'm probably going to follow up with Alex Albon. And then, like I say, budget option, I haven't really decided yet. It's going to be between Sargent and Ricciardo with my budget. Do I want to double up on Williams? Not sure, but I do think they're going to be strong around here. Daniel Ricciardo, again, looked pretty decent actually. He had quite a good race, considering he had some contact on turn 1, which was not his fault. But he had a good recovery drive, good pace from him throughout the race. So yeah, Ricciardo definitely looks promising. So I could definitely see Ricciardo still in there to kind of hedge my bets a little bit against the Williams double up. But yeah, I do think Williams are going to be in there this weekend, and we could see Albon with a double-digit thing. Well, we should see definitely double digits. I say definitely, but it's a sprint weekend, so we should see some extra points from everyone. So that team selection aside, we'll move on to chips. So in terms of chips, at the moment, I'm not considering obviously I am considering using chips, but I'm not actually thinking I'm going to use a chip. And I keep saving these chips. I've only used 2 chips so far. I've used no negative and final fix so far. So I've still got 4 chips left, including the big one, which is the triple DRS boost. I saved it from Austria a couple of weekends ago, which I kind of regret doing now. But I kind of committed to it. So I'm going to have to use it on another sprint weekend or another grid penalty. And in terms of triple DRS boost in this weekend, I don't think I want to, unless there's some grid penalties. And I did see that Verstappen is kind of getting a bit closer to using up some of his engine components, like allowed engine components for the season. We're only halfway through, so we should at some point see that grid penalty that I'm kind of holding out for the triple DRS boost. And that's kind of why I didn't go with it in Austria a few weekends ago, and I kind of need to stick to my guns a little bit on that. But at the same time, I'm not going to be like compounding a potential mistake and be like, I'm not going to use it until the grid penalty comes. If I think the moment is right and the moment is Spa, then I will use it in Spa. And then obviously I'll be using the double boost on Perez. I think it could be a good opportunity in Spa. However, there is obviously, as always, every weekend nowadays, it's just the threat of rain. Spa is kind of notorious for bad weather. We obviously had the recent Grand Prix called off entirely, where we had like two fake laps basically. So yeah, that was a complete write-off. So there is a bit of a risk in using chips in that sense, I guess. And obviously in the rain in general, even Max Verstappen, who's a phenomenal driver and good in the rain as well, there is always just that chance that just to goes through that puddle just like an inch to the right and suddenly skids off and he's in the wall and you've lost your triple DRS boost. So there is that risk if you want a DRS boost for Verstappen this weekend if there's rain. Particularly, I think Friday, Saturday is looking a bit dodgy. Obviously, Friday dodgy qualifying for Verstappen could be good because then he can make up positions in the sprint potentially, or not. No, because Friday qualifying is now going to Sunday, so he could actually make up positions in the actual Grand Prix. So either way, there's potential for triple DRS boost on Verstappen, but I don't think I'm going to use it at the moment. I'd rather save it for a kind of a more guaranteed dry race, something like Kota later on in the season potentially, or the grid penalty, which I think will come at some point. But keep your ears and eyes peeled for news on grid penalty stuff if you haven't used your triple DRS boost already. In terms of other chips, Autopilot chip is potentially an option. There's a couple of reasons why I would use the autopilot chip or not use it. This weekend, again, because of the threat of rain, the autopilot could be kind of like a safety valve that if Verstappen does crash out, whatever, the autopilot onto Perez or whatever can save you the embarrassment of doubling up on a DNF for Verstappen. And the other reason I would use the autopilot would be when you're kind of unsure who's gonna actually win the race. Now, at the moment, despite the rain, I think Verstappen is slam dunk the absolute clear favourite to win the race. So I don't think autopilot is really justified. But we could potentially see later on in the season, maybe he says, please, someone might get closer to Red Bull, and then it's a bit unsure. Suddenly if McLaren keep progressing and get on to Red Bull's level, or Mercedes finally get that fix that they need to get at least kind of more or less on par with Red Bull, then suddenly it becomes unclear, who's going to win? Is it Verstappen? Is it Hamilton? Is it even Lando Norris? Who knows? When it becomes a bit more unclear, then using the autopilot may also be a useful chip. In terms of this weekend, though, I think the only real reason I would use it is because of the threat of rain and kind of a safety valve, but probably not going to use it. I'm going to run out of races to use these chips. I'm just like, it's probably a better time later on in the season, it'll be fine. And then it's going to get to like Abu Dhabi. I'm like, I've still got like 3 chips left. Damn. But yeah, that won't happen. But you never know. So yeah, in terms of other chips, the other chip I would potentially consider in wildcard is kind of like a no. It's no point for me personally, unless your team's a complete mess, then I wouldn't use the wildcard. The other chip I would consider would be I never remember what it's called. Is it unlimited, limitless, whatever it's called, where you can pack in as many like budget-free drivers as you can, all the best drivers. Again, I probably wouldn't use it on this wet weekend, and I also don't know for sure who potentially are the top 5 drivers. And as McLaren are at the moment the second best team and their constructor is very affordable, I think the limitless, whatever it's called, is better used later on the season, potentially when Mercedes are stronger. And obviously Mercedes as a constructor are 25 million. They're really expensive. Look at like 2.5 times as much as what McLaren are, pretty much. So yeah, maybe when Mercedes have a couple of upgrades and they're looking like second best team potentially, or even Ferrari, or I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But yeah, more likely when Mercedes are looking potentially like the second best team. Maybe something like Brazil, another sprint race, and Mercedes pretty good around there. Well, they were very good around there last season, so they could be good around there again this season. We could see using that chip and just going kind of triple Red Bull, triple Mercedes plus Lando Norris or whatever. So I think there are better options down the line in general for the chips this weekend, although I do think we should definitely consider all possibilities going into a sprint weekend. But for me, for now, I'm probably not going to be using any chips, and I feel like I say this every week, but I will use chips eventually. I've got 4 left to use, and what is there, only 11 races left or whatever it is, so I'm going to use them at some point, but probably not now, but never say never. So that pretty much sums up my thoughts and feelings going into Spa. There won't be any further videos etc from me because I'm unavailable on Friday to do a live stream, and then obviously we've got FP1 straight into the deadline, so unfortunately no more videos for a few weeks from me. I'll take this opportunity just to say a big thank you to everyone who's been watching my videos, obviously all of last season and indeed so far through this season. A big thank you. I really enjoy doing these videos despite having a very busy dad life, as I'm sure all the dads out there and mums or whatever can appreciate. But I do enjoy doing these videos still, and you guys being able to interact with you, reply to you in the comments, interact with you on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. What's Elon Musk doing? Don't know. That's a whole other kettle of fish. But anyway, yeah, I do appreciate all your comments, all the positivity, nothing but positivity, honestly, like, which kind of shocks me in a way because the internet in general is kind of a pretty kind of vile place, kind of lots of obnoxious comments and things, but just, that I think I've just had nothing but just positivity from everyone who's been watching my videos, so thank you very much. It's like, it means a lot to me, and I appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos. So I'm just going to say, yeah, a very big thank you, and I will see you in a few weeks' time. And I'm actually potentially, hopefully, finally moving house in a few weeks. So hopefully that's not going to interfere too much with video production, because I think my moving date, dependent on a couple of things, could well be at the end of August when the next race is. So we'll see how that affects things. But I'll find a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'll get the next video out for, where are we, Zandvoort? Yeah, we're in Zandvoort next race, so in a few weeks. regardless of which house I'm in, hopefully I'll be able to produce some more fantastic F1 content if that's what it is. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. I'm going to stop prattling on as I like to do, and I'll wish you well. And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Team selection, what are you doing? Can you afford triple Red Bull, triple McLaren? I'm jealous.